is identity at the center.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Not so bad yourself.
Great. Look, we're here at Authenticate 2025.
We'll give it away.
Listen, sometimes a little slow in the uptake, but I think things are starting to come together for me, right? Major themes at the conference are things like, hey, the attacks are still the things they've been, phishing, social engineering, things like that, to get your password, right? Now, how do we solve that? I think the answer has been Passkeys, but it continues to evolve to now include identity verification. So you need this technology to solve this non-technical way that the hackers are working. At the same time, there's also a theme where AI is playing a role, not only for the good guys, but for the bad guys as well. So I think there's this AI arms race going on. I don't know. All these themes are like, this is why you come to conferences, right? Is like, there's the theme, there's information, you sit there, and then I think at some point, for everybody, it's just like, yeah, that aha moment is like, I get it. I think I get it.
You think you're getting it?
I think I'm getting it.
Okay. So identity verification obviously is huge, but I don't think it's just a technology. Because what is identity verification? It's verification of, typically, at least in most of these scenarios, a document. And what is that document? Something government issued, right? Something that is, or maybe financial institution, or maybe education. So I think there is an opportunity for partnership here between a whole bunch of different entities to try and make this better for people. And I think that's what we're seeing at a good conference as well. There's a lot of attendees from a lot of different industries and verticals and technologies, but it's not just technology vendors. It's also banks, education. I think healthcare is here, higher ed. I don't know if there's government here. We can ask our guests of that, but I think all those need to come together to really make this something that actually takes off and really flies.
Yeah, there's a lot of practitioners here, so we can see the progress is happening already, but more and more organizations are drinking the Kool-Aid and saying, all right, we need to do this as well. When I think about the identity verification, I think where it hits home for me is, we've talked a lot in the past about this unhappy path, right? So that most of the hacks don't go through the front door. It comes down to the unlocking of a forgotten or a lost passkey in this example. Well, what if you could go back to a verified identity? You could do identity verification to unlock your passkey. Now that's powerful.
Yes. So I'm a fan of Passkeys. Every time I see it, I set it up. So why don't we just get into it with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Andrew Shikiar, sitting across the table from us. CEO of FIDO?
Yeah, executive director
and CEO. I feel like I've been butchering your title for several times because you've been on this.
As long as you have me, you can call me whatever you want.
10 times now.
10. I'm really here just to pad my lead.
And you are doing a fine job.
Yes.
I was talking to Jim yesterday during your keynote and say, all right, we got to do something for Andrew.
You don't have to say, this is fine. I appreciate this. If I keep padding my lead, I don't know if I'm like the Cal Ripken of IDAC or like LeBron. I don't know. I'm near as athletic or strong as either of those guys, but I take pride in this record, and I do intend to keep it.
Well, it's definitely a career highlight as far as I'm concerned.
So
there's that.
It is.
Why don't we start with where we're at, right? The Authenticate this 2021, one of my favorites of the years.
Yeah.
And it's been a great conference so far, but I'm curious, before we get to that, let's get into that as well. But yeah, your keynote yesterday.
Yeah,
it was a little bit of kind of make everything. It was like, all right, here's where we've been, and then here's where we're going. So we start with kind of
try to have a narrative.
Yeah, right. That's like, there's a story, right?
Well, first, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I answered to Hart.
Yes,
to Jim D.
I got a good chuckle up, kid.
Yeah, so that was that.
And we're using Macs.
Yes,
so I've been told you're not a massive.
It's all there. So I'm open-minded and changing, evolving through the years. So it's great to have an opportunity to kind of help set up the vision for where we're heading as an alliance for the next year or so. I talked about where we're coming, what we've done, and where we're coming from, and where we're going. So the first message was around Passkeys and progress with Passkeys. The fact of the matter is, Jeff, I love what you said. Like, when you see a passkey, you enroll, you use it, you love them, and I do too. And I mentioned, I still get a thrill every time I see like a passkey signing. Like, I love it, and I love the fact that when I meet random people like on the golf course or something, they ask what I do, I can actually say, have you ever used a passkey? Like, yeah, of course I have. And that's what I do. So there's something like so tangible about it, and the progress is so real that's fantastic. So the past couple of years, we've had these counting statistics, like, well, we estimate, 4 billion total accounts can use passkeys, and 7 billion and 10 billion. And it's we can't do that anymore because the rollouts are so broad, and we know the big brands that are doing this, but there's no point, quantifying the total number of accounts that could use it. What I did share is that we estimate over 3 billion actual passkeys are being used to secure accounts. That's a big number. 3 billion in 3 years, less than 3 years. That's fantastic progress. All right, so really happy with that progress, but we also realize that like our job's far from done. Like I firmly believe that passkeys are inevitable, right? For consumer sign-in, we will look back at passwords as a relic, right? As a rotary phone. But it'll take a while to get there. We want to make sure that we stay on that path to inevitability, and so we have work to do. So I talked about things we need to improve on. One is on UX improvements. I talked about making sure that passkeys are fully capable and effective in the enterprise for workforce, and these are things we'll work on. And the last thing I talked about was a need for practitioners to really contemplate the broader security picture, not just for sign-in, which is where passkeys are closing the front door to attackers, but also removing knowledge-based credentials for recovery. All right, so if you have, and there's a reason why a lot of companies keep passwords around with passkeys. This is it's very complex to get rid of them altogether. But putting them further and further in the corner, further and further in the background is what we need to do to lead to their ultimate demise. Because as long as they're like readily accessible for recovery, there is a backdoor that's open to attackers. Right, so that's another imperative we have for 2026. So we're going to push on all those things as we look to see more and more adoption, better deployments with passkeys in the market.
I find it interesting that you mentioned the user experience for passkeys. I feel like it's already pretty good.
Yeah.
And you've spent a lot of time and building out the FIDO standards for the user experience, and you have a whole bunch of documentation.
Yeah.
So when you say make it better, like, what do you mean?
Well, so, it depends on your passkey experience, but the fact of the matter is that every passkey experience needs to be an excellent experience. Full stop. And oftentimes you don't sign in through the front door. Right? Not everyone enters a website through the front. There's a lot of adjacencies where you enter, say, an Amazon or a PayPal, or some of these flows are not always through the front door. They come in different ways. So there's a lot of things to contemplate on how someone comes to sign in. There's also a surprisingly large amount of combinations of browsers and operating systems and devices where there's still some inconsistencies. There's some UX flows that are inconsistent with security keys and things like that. So, look, we're aware of these, and it's a top priority is to identify them, figure out how to solve them and to solve them. And I appreciate the fact that you think it's a good experience and you know that we've done good work on this, but there's always work to be done.
Yeah, that's user experience to me is a lot about ubiquity and consistency. Yeah. Like as you go from place to place, passkeys everywhere, but if they do it differently, then that's going to automatically confuse people.
Yeah, choosers, right? So then the fact of the matter is you can enroll multiple passkeys for a service. And I often do this. Right, so I live a very heterogeneous life. I'll enroll a passkey on my iPhone. I'll do one on my Windows, for Windows alone. I'll do one for my third-party credential manager. And sometimes, the site doesn't know what to present me with. Right, and so there's things we can, improve on that. And I think again, it's all attainable. And I think it's always important to bear in mind we've been at this for only a couple of years, and we're seeing great progress. And these are, what I'll call lowercase g, lowercase p growing things. Right, I feel really good about the progress, but there's always work to be done.
You just need a better theme music, right, for the growing pains.
So we talked about progress on that front, but the other question we get, so not just counting statistics, but qualitative statistics. So we introduced the Passkey Index. You mentioned that. This is in response to really a desire for benchmarks. I talk to companies a lot who are deploying, and they might be early in their rollout. Like, hey, Andrew, look, we have a, say 35% enrollment rate. Is that good? We've cut our sign-in, time by, 75%. Is that good? I'm making those numbers up. But like, how do you quantify these things, right? It's kind of like a stick in space. If there's no, no context around it, how do you know how you're doing?
It feels better, but how do you measure that?
Yeah. But feel is important.
Yep.
But, quantitative data is even better, right? So we're starting to, we want to start providing benchmarks to the industry. So we launched a Passkey Index, which is an initiative comprised of FIDO member relying parties, major service providers who have had rollouts in market for a bit. And it's a small N. So there's only like 9 companies contributed to this, but we took an average of their aggregate data. Right, so nothing's appended directly to a company, but each company's average sign success rate and time to sign in and a number of metrics. We boiled that down into some benchmarks that people can be aware of and shoot for. Right, and so this is our first step with this initiative, and we intend to let this grow over time, both as a service to the industry to let people know what they should shoot for, but also as a benefit to members. Right, so I think that generally, members who contribute data to this can get data out of it. There's a lot of data that we held back from publishing. So we want to make sure that, our community at large, but also our membership community has what they need to be successful with their Passkey roll-ins.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you talked about the Passkey Index this week. We're here at the conference, Authenticate 2025. Tell us about it. How's it going so far?
I've been thrilled. So we have more people than ever. I think we have around 750 on site, maybe, which is, I think, around 650 last year. So, nice growth in the number of attendees. We have a lot of people attending remotely as well. We're one of the few conferences that still offer a fully remote attendee option.
Which is great. Fully support that.
Which is great. So, hey, look, if you just want to get the content, attend remotely. And if you can't travel, attend remotely. Also, you can get we archive all the content, make it available first to people who do register and pay. So we're very cognizant of that as well, but the people on site get the whole benefit of being part of the community. And it sounds like such a cliche and kind of cheesy, but there is something pretty special here. And you mentioned this before, like there's a real sense of community here, and people are here to help each other. And like, if you are interested in authentication and passkeys, like you're not going to find more capable, smarter people that are going to find here in our halls. And the content is fantastic, but the hallway con is always a highlight, right? Seeing people connecting, seeing someone who gives a talk about their deployment, spend like half an hour talking to people who have questions about it. There's this real sense of goodwill and a urgency to help each other be successful that really permeates the whole event here. So I think it's been a good event in numbers. A couple other data points. I think and Jimmy mentioned this, there's a bigger practitioner audience here than years past. And we saw this kind of anecdotally as the registrations came in, but I'm hearing from our vendor hall that they're having, more, interesting conversations with people who are further along their deployment, their purchasing journey, who have very pointed questions about how to roll out, FIDO infrastructure. So, more of a practitioner audience, and generally, conversations has gotten more and more up level, while also leaving room for new attendees. So I think we have around 45% new attendees this year. Right. That doesn't mean they're new to Passkeys, it means they're new attendees, but people of all skill sets who are coming here to learn, to advance their deployments and move forward as well. So been really happy on that front with the show so far.
Yeah, I growth of practitioners. That's the one thing I'd say I felt that is the most different from past years.
Yeah.
Like a whole bunch of people who are new to the conference. In the beginning of the show, I kind of tried to think out loud about what I'm kind of pulling all these pieces together to paint the picture of what Authenticate's all about. How close did I come? What would you change?
I think you hit it on the head. I mean, so it's about, the name of the show is Authenticate. So it's about authentication. I mean, so at its core, it's about authentication. So I want to talk about what we're doing next. So it's a place to learn about all things authentication with a focus on the FIDO approach. I think that's our mission statement. And so no matter where you are in your Passkey journey, your authentication journey, you're going to learn something here, right? You're going to learn something by listening to practitioners give case studies. We're going to learn about different use cases. You're going to learn about futures. You're going to learn about adjacencies. You're going to learn about authorization and new standards and payments and agentic AI and all these things that are, you need to authenticate first to sign into things to take advantage of this. But these are all the things we're covering. One thing we've changed, through the years, and some of the feedback we got last year is like, okay, I get it, Passkeys are great. Like, I don't need case study after case study saying like Passkeys are amazing. So we actually got more selective. It's not just like a cheerleading session. We turned down some amazing case studies that would have been fantastic, but like we can only do so much of like, I use Passkeys, I save money. So there's only so much that we could do. So we try to get sharper with some of the angles, looking at people who are coming back a second time, talking about what's happened, stage 2 of their deployment. So, we've evolved the kind of message we had around this as our audience has matured also. And And then the other key theme we're seeing here are the adjacencies. So part of my keynote, I mean, you mentioned this, Jeff, I talked about like where we've come from and where we're heading. I guess kind of the headline here is that we are, intentionally kind of broadening our focus to look at digital credentials. And so we've been focused on like the broader identity lifecycle for a couple of years now with our identity verification certification, which allows for like what Jim was talking about for possession-based onboarding and recovery, and certifying products against that. But the digital credentials and wallet space is an area where we've gotten a lot of feedback that where we could probably add some value. Right? I think everyone can understand the value and the vision of digital credentials, where like literally your wallet, your physical wallet is digitized. Like no different than like right now you do mobile payments. That's a digitalization of your credit card, but why not your identity and your passport and your diploma and your fishing license, whatever else you need to have digitized is all there, right? And accessible to you, rooted in, a trusted, proof of real world identity that allows you to leverage this in a very nimble, efficient fashion. So everyone's had this vision for literally for decades. We have governments, pushing on this to happen. A lot of states have mobile driver's licenses here in the United States. More famously in Europe, the European Union is pushing every member state to have digital wallets by the end of 2026. Mm-hmm. So what's been holding us back is not, vision or ambition, but what's been holding it back, I think, is, there's things that we could do to unlock this, right? And I think that's what we're focused on doing, is bringing the three things that FIDO Alliance does and does very well into this space. And what we do as an alliance, we create technical specifications, we run marketing and enablement programs, and we run a certification program that really unlocks the value of open standards. So you think about Passkeys, right? We have CTAP and WebAuthn. We certified products against those B2B products people can deploy against, and enablement. And that was a Passkey moment, right? So like WebAuthn and FIDO2 existed before Passkeys, but when we came up with the Passkey, the brand, the logo program, the user guidelines, all of a sudden it gave a name and some commonality to what people have been doing. And it really spurred all the growth that we've been seeing with Passkeys. So we've been talking to major issuers of digital credentials, major consumers of digital credentials about what do they see holding the market back, and we think there's opportunity for us to provide value there alongside partner organizations like OpenID Foundation and ISO.
So you mentioned Europe, and Jim and I were at the EIC conference, critical in Berlin earlier this year. Great conference. What struck me is how far ahead they are when it comes to digitalization of their credentials. So you mentioned, the EU member nations need to have something in place. One of the things I learned there was there's actually a financial implication if they don't do it. It's some sort of fine or tax or something that, the country has to pay if they don't do it by that time. I was like, okay, well, that's one way to get people motivated. I don't know if that works. Right, yeah. I don't know how that would work in the US because we see the fragmentation with mobile driver's license, for example. So trying to get, 50 states and territories, right, to try and get on the same path. I think everyone wants to do that.
Yeah.
Like, what do you see as holding back like that specific area? Is it just the politics or is it something else?
No, I think so. One thing we want to look at doing is providing some sort of wallet certification, right? And so there's different protocols out there. There's ISO protocol, there's OpenID Foundation protocol. We have a protocol that can be used for, credential presentation across devices. These are all things that can be used for, as part of a wallet. And I think that there's a lack of, we feel like there's a value to be added like by launching a certification program, for wallets, for the wallet providers and for the relying parties as well. And that's the type of thing that could start to kind of help catalyze the space a little bit to help move things forward. So wallets are one area. I think there's also no one's focused on usability. Not enough focus on usability. And there's been some great work like on the US front, like the mobile driver's license front. The STA Secure Technology Alliance has done some really good kind of sessions on talking about MDL use cases. There have been some interops that have happened, but it's part pieces here, pieces there, and I think that FIDO Alliance brings to the table is the right set of stakeholders to work with companies like that, organizations like that, just bring greater focus on the enablement aspects of making digital credentials a reality, throughout the world.
Feels like you had some early adopters. I know the one company, I know it's not their full name, but Docomo, they were the early adopters Then you had a lot of big tech adoption where basically all the platforms bought in on this Passkey process. To me, like that's the head of steam that needs to get around everything. But now that you're at that point, it seems like it's just going to roll.
Yeah, absolutely. With I feel like we're making really good progress with Passkeys, and it's the set of stakeholders that we have in the alliance that helps make this happen. I think we're incredibly unique in the sense that we're very fortunate to have a broad set of organizations, right? So all the major platforms, the device manufacturers, leaders in identity and security technology, governments are members in FIDO Alliance, and then last but not least, like the service providers who need FIDO to succeed, right? And then they've really driven a lot of the use cases and driven a lot of the adoption of Passkeys in the market. And so then we as an alliance, look at what we've done. And we've also done other work also, like in Credential Exchange, FIDO Device Onboard. So we've proven that we can execute on Passkeys, but also in adjacent spaces. So as our stakeholders got together, then they talk about what are some other common pain points? One of them was around digital credentials, right? And they feel like, they like collaborating inside of FIDO Alliance. We want to do more collaboration, and that's really, they're the ones really pushing for us to take on this very important work, and we will take on this work and we'll execute against that.
Do you think that for this to move forward, you still need to continue to have the major players like Google, Apple, Microsoft, right? When those three got involved with Passkeys, that was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Is it similar for wallets?
Yes.
I mean, obviously Apple Pay is huge. You've got Samsung Wallet, you've got Android Wallet. Yeah. I don't think Microsoft has a wallet. And they
have so much infrastructure. Absolutely. So Apple, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, NTT Docomo, different mobile operators. And in Korea, we have SK Telecom. So like literally, like,
right. If you forget one, then we also
there's a lot. We have a lot of, but like really, those are the types of companies that have a very vested interest in seeing this space unlock, right? And it's in everyone's interest to see this space mature and happen. This stands to increase commerce and reduce fraud, right? And so I think one of the biggest challenges that like payment networks have, or payment companies like a PayPal, is fraud, right? And also they want to be they can be wallet providers. So there's both kind of cost savings and financial opportunity with digital credentials. And so, to be clear, these companies want us to do this, yes, it's for the sake of society, but it's for their benefit as well. And that's the whole point of standards. Right? Standards are not all about altruism. It's about, basically deciding like, hey, look, we're going to commoditize a certain level of technology and compete on top of that so that we can all be more efficient in how we invest our R&D and how we compete and how we deliver better services to the world at large. And that's what standards are about. That's what FIDO's about. And that's what we're doing Passkeys that we'll aim to do with our partners in the ecosystem with wallets and credentials.
That predictability is a big, big part of this, right? Is here's what to expect. It's going to be this format or whatever, right? Process, and having the ability to count on that is such a big part of the experience.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So the conference is called Authenticate.
Yes.
Now we're moving into identity verification. Are we keeping the name Authenticate? Are we going to try to come up with something new? Like, how's that going to work?
Yeah, we don't have plans to change the name Authenticate, but I think
I already own the domain name, right? So,
but I think that it's important for us to get the word out as we plan for next year's show that we'll be talking about authentication and more. And actually, if you look at the agenda this year, there's a lot of good content on digital credentials, on agentic AI, on payments, on automotive, right? So other things, again, authentication is the front door for a lot of these things. Passkeys are a front door for a lot of these things, but also there are other applications, other use cases, and full adjacencies to Passkeys that we will address. And we'll want to get the word out to people that if you want to talk about those things, Authenticate's a great place to come to talk about them with the experts.
So you've got other conferences as well, right? So this is the one that's in Carlsbad.
Yes.
There's one in Asia, I think, that's going to take place.
Yes. Well, we are announcing this week. So it will have been announced by the time this airs that we are launching Authenticate APAC in Singapore in June of 2026. I think June 2nd through 4th. Double check those dates before you book travel.
Okay.
Tuesday through Thursday in Singapore. Yeah. So we're very excited to expand the brand into Asia. In 2023 and 2024, we had something called the FIDO APAC Summit. The first one was hosted in Vietnam, the next one in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Both were fantastic events, kind of regional events, but we had probably 300-400 people attend both of those, which is very inspiring to see. Traveling halfway around the world to see people who are super interested to learn about FIDO and how to deploy FIDO and how to deploy Passkeys. So we're basically just kind of extending the FIDO and the Authenticate brand into that activity, tying into our member meeting that happens at the same time in Singapore next June. So we're very excited to kind of take that next step with this conference and with our broader FIDO community.
So last question is this: what do you notice as the biggest difference between the U.S. audience when it comes to FIDO Alliance and Passkeys and identity verification versus audiences in other parts of the world? You've had these conversations. Like, do you notice anything different?
But the audiences?
Yeah, I mean, more like, is there interest in different spots? Are they having different messages? Like, what's the...
Yeah, I don't, it's hard to generalize. Like you said, like in Europe, for example, a lot's tied to digital identity. Like, what can I do? Like, closer to kind of government-oriented applications. Although, I talked to the good folks from Balca, the Spanish bank. They're here this week, and they're expanding their Passkey rollout. So a lot of the same consumer applications are happening, in Europe as we're happening here, but there's probably more of a kind of regulatory lean. Mm-hmm. In Asia, there may be some more mobile first type experiences, and Southeast Asia, some more emerging opportunities. But we were down in Australia this year in February, and like Australia is like, on the bleeding edge of Passkey adoption. All right. So like Ubank, which is the subsidiary of NAB, ANZ Bank, are also committing to or supporting Passkeys. There's a conversation today from VicRoads, which is like the equivalent of the state of Victoria's DMV, about how they've moved to, like, they're moving towards 80% adoption of Passkeys. So like the adoption in Australia is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So long answer short, it's hard to generalize, but the good news is we're seeing adoption all over the place. And the one area that we've yet to really engage with, where there's a lot of activity, is in Brazil. Right. So to take part in the open banking, open finance activity in Brazil, you need to have a FIDO 2 certified server. So there are dozens of banks in Brazil that are now FIDO certified. Every mobile payment there is using a passkey, or a lot of mobile payment. I shouldn't say every. A lot of mobile payments there are using Passkeys. JustPay is a new member of FIDO Alliance. They're driving a lot of that work along with Visa in Brazil. So there's a lot of activity in South America as well. So look, I think what we've done as an alliance with our stakeholders is, put great technology out to market, make it available to people, build it in devices that everyone can use. And as a result, we collectively are starting to address the password problem, which has really plagued the world for decades.
Yeah. Really, literally decades. Right? Yeah. Like, yes, it's a very dawn of time.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, look, we've been aware of the challenge for 20 something years, which is when MFA first started coming out, right? And the answer has always been like how to make passwords suck less with more layers, and that's a good short-term answer. Was, as we know, that's not sustainable. So Passkeys are a password replacement, and the reason we're seeing adoption at the scale we're seeing it is because they work. Mm-hmm. They provide returns, and again, that's what we're starting to quantify with the Passkey Index. It's what we're trying to reinforce with shows like this, with things like Passkey Central, to help companies and organizations move their Passkey implementations forward. So that ultimately, this is all, in the name of creating a safer internet.
It's been an amazing ride for the last few years. And I just want to say thank you for your support of this show.
Oh, yes.
Having been on so many times, I know you're a very busy guy, so trying to carve out time for you with this type of thing.
Oh, gosh. Wow.
Is always fun. We did FIDO Feud.
You did?
Last night.
You did?
It ended in a tie, which I'm not sure how to feel about it yet.
The guarantees to repeat performance, I kind of think it was fixed. Because we certainly can't cut FIDO Feud now. Because, it has to come back because there's a tie, so.
We have to come up with like branding for it. I'm already kind of leaning into FIDO Feud 2026, the rematch of the rematch.
Oh, well, that's something like
rematch. Sure. Yeah. But your team has been great to work with. I give a shout out to Adrian. She was awesome.
Yeah.
With all time. And she manned the sound effects. So I don't think by the time this episode goes live, people won't have that as an episode, but we'll hope to get that out by the end of the year. But it was so much fun. So thank you for letting us.
We have a great team at FIDO Alliance, and I couldn't think more highly of my colleagues. It's really an honor to work with them also. Everyone's very passionate about what we do. We believe in what we're doing. Ask everyone who works with us to, first of all, sign up to believe in the mission and be missionary about it, and everyone is. And so we take a lot of pride in what we do, and I think it shows here at the show and everything that the FIDO team does.
It's been great. So we'll go ahead and leave it there, I think, for this week. IDCpodcast.com, IDCpodcast.tv for the YouTube and all that good stuff. So like and subscribe. let's bring back Andrew for 11, probably in a couple months. And we'll leave it there. So thanks everyone for watching and or listening. Andrew, thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll talk with everyone in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.